Welcome, everybody. This is Adam Freeman along with Paul Brees. You are listening to Drive Through Sports with Adam and Paul on March the 28th, 2020. And we're coming to you from alternate places. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and Paul is in Brentwood, Tennessee. And we are both teachers, but not right now. We're both under quarantine and self-isolation, sort of like everybody else. And we've got some sports that we want to lead off with, and we'll kind of meld that into some human interest stuff a little bit later. And Brees, how we doing today?
Oh man, Saturday, my wife is yelling at every kid, and we are trying to move and shake and rocking and rolling.
All right. Well, yeah, as you guys well know, Paul with his seis bambinos under the roof. Any and every morning is an adventure and an exercise in patience, for sure. Talking about like what our platform is here in Drive Through Sports, with nothing going on as far as like competitions. We've mentioned that. One of the things that came up this week, and this has been the last 2 days, is Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, talked about several different options. They talked about starting the season in mid-May, possibly at earliest. I think it's going to be more like June, and it may be later than it may be mid-June. They talked about that. They have talked about playing the full season, meaning going all the way into December and possibly having a World Series around Christmas, if you can believe that. And then also what has just recently come out is playing 7-inning double headers. Okay, so Paul, I'm just throwing that all in your lap right there. What is your initial first take on all of that stuff when it comes to Major League Baseball, and what could our summer look like?
Well, obviously, you had to cut the spring training kind of short, and they were into the, started playing some spring training games, and now you have to come back if there's a possibility even at June 1st. And how do you pick up a spring training? I mean, you still have to make personnel cuts and stuff like that. How long would that take? Well, yeah, you talk about the 7-inning double headers. I think the players were pretty adamant against that. It would cut into their statistics, and when you have contracts that are statistics heavy, you get paid on certain statistics. There are things like that they would have to possibly redraw up and stuff like that. But the 9-inning game going to December is it just fathoms me that you should not be playing baseball in December.
Yeah, I think you can't. I don't think that Major League Baseball wants to face the possibility of competing against college football and the NFL, and we're going to talk about that in just a second as well. But how much time do the players need to get ready? You can't just say, "Hey, we're going to start in May 15th and not play any games, and then just suit them up and start playing games that count." Also, something else that's interesting is the Major League Baseball owners have agreed to basically grant the players service time. Let's say that this whole year is scrapped. The Major League Baseball owners have agreed to grant the athletes, the players, service time for a year service time, even though there were no games. Now, here's where that gets interesting. All these free agent acquisitions, I'm a big Dodger fan, so I wanted to see Mookie Betts play in a Dodger uniform. At the end of the year, he will be a free agent still. So there's lots of things up in the air, and we have to kind of think about that. Again, that's very minor in the grand scheme of things, but again, this is at first and foremost just sort of a sports information and show, and then we want to kind of hit on a few of those topics. But switching gears here to some comments that were very controversial yesterday by an icon in the college football world and landscape, broadcaster Kirk Herbstreit, was interviewed and quoted saying that he would be shocked if the NFL played and if there was college football in the fall. What did you think about that, Paul, when you saw that and heard that comment?
Well, I was wondering if Kurt had any kind of inside intel to this whole coronavirus thing. I mean, geez, we're all under the impression, hey, let's hit the summer and see what happens kind of deal. Herbstreit is saying, we're in this possibly in for till December.
Well, that too. I mean, as a media member and a person who has a huge voice and a huge following, to me, like, if you or I said something like that, then nobody, it's not a big deal. But when Kurt Herbstreit, Mr. Game Day, comes out and says that, I think it's a little irresponsible to speak about the severity of something that he's not an expert in. He's not a virologist. He's not an epidemiologist. He's not a scientist. He's a sports broadcaster. That's what he needs to focus on. Speculating about stuff that could happen 6 months from now, it only exacerbates the problem. I think that was just my initial thought about seeing that, that he said that. And I thought, and I love the guy. I love watching him. I love his reporting and stuff. I just thought it was a little irresponsible and a little out of his lane. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Who has he been talking to?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's the inside sources? I mean, you're talking about the livelihood of a lot of athletes, and a lot of universities and a lot of huge money involved. And just to throw that out there, that's
oh yeah. Can you imagine? Listen, they already have canceled, G-Day. That was a big, huge thing when that got announced down here. No spring game. Because that draws 80,000 people to Athens every year. Can you imagine the upheaval and anarchy that would ensue if the SEC canceled the football season? Are you kidding me? This whole state would go absolutely ape. It would be crazy, crazy, crazy. I don't even want to think about it, man.
Yeah,
it would be bad.
I'm sure Herbstreit got a few Twitter replies and
I'm sure he got
voices of criticism.
Oh, there's no doubt. He probably got a little talking to, little hand slap. Said, "Hey, man," and maybe whoever slapped his hand said what I said. Said, "Hey, man, stay in your lane. Let's not get crazy here." Speaking of which, we're gonna go talk a little human interest here. Just some things that Brees and I had been kind of discussing, and with the quarantines and things like that, and some actual I know that Athens, where Abby goes to school, she's at Georgia. She's home now, obviously. They instituted a 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. So a lot of these cities and municipalities, instituting curfews, we thought we'd go back about 35 years and talk about curfews for a second. Now, Brees, growing up, what was your curfew situation? Because it wasn't dictated by, nowadays it's a 12:30 curfew. It's an ordinance. Okay. There was no such thing back when we're growing up. What was your curfew growing up?
Well, obviously, living with my mom, she had this idea of nothing good happens after midnight kind of situation. So,
yeah, my parents were the same philosophy.
Yeah, thinking that, yes, midnight was probably the cutoff on the weekends. Did I adhere by that? Who knows?
Well, and that's another thing, no cell phones. It's not like you can be like, hey, I'm on my way. It's 11:58. I'm on my way. I'm going to be a little bit late. You were having to call and say you were going to be late. You'd had to do it from wherever you were, movie theater, somebody's house, whatever. And so that was a little bit different situation. But yeah, I think I've heard the phrase, if you can't do it at 11:45, if you can't do it at 11:45, or 11 o'clock, anything after that is probably, you're up to no good. So I would have to say, I think mine started about like 11:30, and I think I negotiated at some point to 12, and then a little bit of a leeway there. If I was driving, if I was not driving, that sort of thing. Maybe, I don't remember it being later than 12 o'clock. I really don't.
Obviously, I've always talked to my wife and I have always had this discussion about, with technology, man, I could have been a 3.5 student. I felt like,
Oh yeah.
Instead of, I was not much on studying to begin with, but, I also know that with technology, when you're talking about curfews and stuff, that I probably would have been in more trouble, especially if my mom would have been able to track me down.
Oh, let's not even go. Yeah. We won't even go there. If there had been Life 360 back in the day.
That's right. That was, yeah. And some kids now, know that there's being tracked by Life 360. They'll, hit that offline button from certain times, and they'll turn it back on, and you'll ask them, hey, you were off. Well, what happened? I must have bad service or blah, blah, blah. And, internet.
That's a conscious decision to turn that off.
Absolutely.
Something that just, comes in and out. Yeah. I mean, the curfew situation has definitely changed. It's gone from something that was dictated by our parents, to something that is now dictated by the system to basically keep kids off the road from driving late at night.
And you would say trusting parents.
Yes.
I feel like our parents were pretty trusting of us to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
I don't trust mine at all, man. I'm not going to tell you.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I trust mine, but it's been there's been some trials that have led to that trust, because I had to make sure they knew that I knew what was the heck was going on, that I'm not an idiot. Okay. So, I know what's up. Okay. And, you're not going to, fool me into the fact that, we're going over so-and-so's house, and,
it's
not going to be any boys over, this is, or there's, their parents are there. And, I'm a teacher at your school. Okay. I know, I hear stuff. Okay. So that doesn't fly. And I've had to make that determination a couple times. And, but for the most part, I do trust their judgment. Of course, Abby's on her own now. So, but I do trust Ella's judgment, and we are pretty particular about who she hangs out with, and where she goes, and when she has to be back, and all that sort of stuff. And she knows that. She knows she's accountable for that. So
you're a great parent. You're a great parent.
Well,
should I say Leslie's a good parent? How about
Leslie's doing a great job.
I got to say this, and chime in and say that kids think that we're not very smart technologically wise when it comes to certain things, and every time I say something to my kids, I say, hey, I saw blah, blah, blah. And they say, oh, man, how'd you know that? Social media. Obviously that may or may not be the case, but I always use that term social media as like, oh, they're really checking up on what's going on, even, with my friends or whatever. So social media is the generalization of the answer parents should use.
Every time. Just to plant the seed to be like, hey, man, dude, I got my eye on you.
Yeah.
And you better know, hey, what you post, I can see that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I agree with that strategy. I totally agree with that strategy. Yeah. To kind of like, move from curfews, a lot of times when we, growing up, we, in an effort to avoid the curfew, a lot of times we'd take advantage of any time we could be away, any trip we could take, particularly like church trips. And gosh, the name escapes me now. not rallies, but I mean, what would we call them?
You're talking about the fast food
No, I'm talking about
rallies.
the
Oh,
weekend trips.
youth group trips.
Yeah.
Uh,
What?
man, fall retreats.
Like
Retreats.
retreats? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, like church retreats. Church retreats. Okay,
yeah, sure.
that's like the weekend retreat. So you'd have, you'd go up to um, Gatlinburg or Fall Creek Falls or somewhere like that, and I gotta go. I've got to go, and I got because you and I were heavily involved in this this particular church trip. I know you remember this one.
But first of all, obviously we have to be remiss in thinking that we were pretty active in our youth group at our church.
Oh yeah,
and we would also be the ones that would also heavily recruit others to come.
yeah.
But there's a part of me that realizes, man, I think our parents sent us to just get us out of the house.
Well, yeah. It's like, you gotta, I think it's a great idea. You go to, isn't youth group going to Pittsburgh in November? Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, and we're gone. Like Friday afternoon, like boom, we're gone. We don't get back till Sunday night. That's the whole weekend. They don't have to deal with us, wondering where we are.
Yeah, so there was never a no, you cannot go.
It was
heavily yes. All right,
heavily yes. I agree with that. And that's a good point. That's a really good point. But the one that I was going to start with today, and we could talk. I mean, we could talk about church retreats for literally hours and hours. But we want to break it up. And this one, I want to talk about this particular church retreat was the Fall Creek Falls retreat. Does this ring in any bells?
There's a good possibility.
Now, there's so many angles I could attack this from, but I'm gonna focus on just the one simple one, and that is, we had there were those awesome cabins like right on the lake. They were really nice, and so there was the main building, right? That was about, I don't know, quarter mile up the trail, maybe. Where on the meeting where we would have our devos and stuff.
Right.
And so I remember, do you remember this? Like everybody's like, hey, we got a meeting in 45 minutes. Everybody meet up there. Well, there was nothing to do in the room, right? And so it was me, you, Lee Tomberlin, Jason McKnight, Craig, it was like six of us. So like me, you, Lee, Jason, Craig, five of us. Okay. Do you remember that? You know where I'm going with this?
No, I'm lost.
Okay.
I thought we were going to be talking about a different one.
No. Okay. This is the one where we're like, it's I don't know, it's like 6 o'clock. So it's, it's dusk. And we're like, man, like, hey, let's go. We got to go up to the meeting hall, whatever. And as we're walking up there, we see this paddle boat. Now is it starting to come together? Okay.
All
right. So we see this paddle boat, and I don't know whose idea this was. It may have been my idea. I don't know. It may have been Jason McKnight's idea. I don't know. And we're like, oh, let's take the paddle boat out and then like dock it at the meeting hall. We'll take the paddle boat around the lake. It's not that far, blah, blah, blah. We're telling it, we'll be there a lot less, whatever. We'll be there before we need to be there. So all five of us get on this paddle boat now. And we're big boys. I mean, it's a lot of weight on that thing. That's 6 people on this paddle boat, which was built for 4. And so we're paddling. And we get out in the middle of the lake and the sun's going down and that thing starts taking on water. And we're about 200 yards out in the middle of this lake. And we can see everybody. We can see everybody in from the middle of the lake in the building where we're supposed to be. But they can't see us because it's completely dark on the lake right now. And I got to be honest, I'm starting to freak out a little bit, because if this thing goes down, we're dead. and nobody's going to find us. And I can remember Pete freaking out a little bit. Like, let's get this thing turned around. He's like, I can't do it. He's like, my legs are hurting. I was like, Pete, pedal faster. He's like, I can't. So anyway, we're supposed to be there at like 6:30, and we don't get there till we're struggling. It takes us like 3 hours to get, and luckily the thing doesn't sink. I mean, I swear I think the thing is going to sink. And we get up to the dock, basically back to where we started, which was at our cabins. Well, we see all these like flashlights all over the place. You remember this? So they're like looking for us. They think we've like disappeared, or like, I don't know what they think. But I will never forget that trip on that freaking paddle boat. We thought we were so smart. We were just going to scoot around, arrive on the dock, and everybody be like, oh, that's so cool. We all go on the paddle boat. And we almost freaking died because of that stupid thing.
That's what happens when you leave 14-year-olds in charge and try to make decisions, right?
Yeah, if we could only go back, maybe we would make different decisions. But yeah. It's
obviously I don't know if we probably got a few minutes.
Yeah, we do.
There were many retreats that we attended, but you have that particular one that kind of stuck out to you. There was a retreat that probably in a different location, different time. There was definitely a different set of people there. And again, you talk about, when you're not in the activities and things like that, you go back to your cabin, you just, we don't have our phones and we don't have anything. And it's time to go to bed. Oh, no. And, there's always that guy that goes to sleep first, right?
Big mistake.
Big mistake in a group, of 14 and 15-year-old people. And, it was something about, hey, let's try this. And so the young man, I'm not going to mention anybody's name, obviously, and he fell asleep first. And we knew he was asleep because, he was snoring a little bit. He was breathing pretty deep, and we knew he was in REM mode. And we came up with the idea of, hey, let's move his bed outside. Because I think it was raining, right?
It was currently pouring down, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we were bored to death inside. And just another thing, too, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a common area in the middle that had, the bunk on either side. There was a common area in the middle with couches. And there was a wood-burning stove that had a stove that went up to the ceiling. And we had a fire going. Dude, if you recall, we were throwing bottle rockets in that thing. We were putting bottle rockets in that thing. Some of them weren't even making it out of the building. Some of them were shooting back at us. And that's where we were in terms of like an activity level. That's how bored we were.
I think that's why now people say no fireworks at retreats. I think we set the bar of that rule.
There's no doubt in my mind that we set the bar there.
So here we go. We're bored. We look at each other and say, hey, let's move this person. Let's take his bed and see if we can carry it outside without him waking up and put him outside in the rain. Funny at the time, the plan was, we're all going to get on each side of this and we're going to try to lift this. I think he was on a top bunk. So on a top bunk. Yeah. So we're lifting him up, and we come to realize, man, it's a lot heavier than I was expecting. and this young man was a pretty small guy, but for some reason trying to lift a mattress, and with his distribution of weight, it became a problem. And I felt like we were getting it, and everybody was set. We had somebody at the door ready to go. And then
there was a sliding glass door.
That's right.
End, and there was a sliding glass door, and we, in our brilliance, we thought this is a no-brainer. This is easy. We lift up, we slide out, we place him on the ground, we slide the door, we lock the door. and then everybody gets away laughing. I mean,
yeah, and
it's
a great prank. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. Somebody started to couldn't lift their end anymore, and it became a problem of one person was going down, and he's going down. Just drop him, and we dropped him. And obviously he woke up and he was not happy.
Well, I don't know if you remember this or not.
Oh, I remember.
Not only was he not happy, the kid slept with a knife. And he pulled a knife on us.
Little did we know that some people sleep with teddy bears. This person was sleeping with a knife. And
I was like, what the heck?
This was not a good situation.
No, it went south pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were pretty lucky that did not escalate into a let's get the adults involved here in the situation, because once the knife got pulled, all of a sudden everybody chilled.
Yeah. You know what? We found things to do.
I was like, you know what? I think I can find something to occupy my time here. I'm good,
Yeah. So all these retreat stories and everything like that, as we bring up, we're talking about we were learning how to quarantine ourselves at these retreats before quarantine was even a thing today.
And before it was cool. So we're in certain instances we're
way ahead of the game.
We're way ahead of the game here, way ahead of the curve, if you will, and I'm completely comfortable with occupying our time here. So that's just the taste that we'll give you today. We'll let you guys simmer on that, and
obviously the less sports that we have to talk about, the more human interest stories from our past we can provide for you.
Yes, and I have a sense, and I get the sense that that's probably going to be the theme sort of moving forward here, as Paul and I will try and send out and get out we'll probably try and send out an episode a day for you guys, because quite frankly, Paul, this is where we're at this point. You and I pretty much have schedules that are pretty open. So the benefactors are going to be the folks listening to Drive Through Sports with Adam and Paul. And I know my sister said she binged all our episodes. So we're gonna say goodbye and au revoir for March 28th, 2020. For Paul Brees, this is Adam Freeman. You've been listening to Drive Through Sports with Adam and Paul.